you look at the pet industry, every major brand is so focused on dog, and the innovation has really just been lacking for cat parents. So BistroCat, in short, is the world's first and only fully automated wet cat food feeder. We are like a Keurig, but for wet cat food. They're just little cups of wet cat food. They all have QR codes on top, but you preload up to 16 of these in the device, and then right from the comfort of your phone, you can schedule all of your feedings for your cat so that you can feed them on their schedule without sacrificing your own. We know that cats need to have moisture in their diets to thrive, but cats are not wired to go to their watering hole, and that's because they're designed to actually get their hydration from their prey. But again, as we continue to domesticate cats and bring them fully indoors, they lose that ability to go hunt down their meals. And when we're only feeding kibble, they become very dehydrated, which can lead to kidney failure, skin and coat issues, gut issues. So it's really important to get these wet meals into their daily diet. Eating wet meals, it's a really crappy experience. You cut your finger when you're trying to open the can, and then you have to slam it down to try to get the food to come out. Our device takes all of those pain points away to make for a seamless feeding experience.
Everybody, welcome back to this. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths, and today's episode is with a real leader who I have been taken with since I met her. We were just chatting about that. Cecelia Carerra is the founder and CEO of BistroCat. And I'm just so glad to have you here today. As I was saying, you've been on my radar, and so when I got you for this, I was very excited.
Well, I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. So folks, I always give you an idea of how I know my guests. And Cecelia, I'm going to call her Cece because that's what I call her. But Cece and I met because she was working at a company called BrightPet, another pet food industry brand. And I was pitching to try to win their business, and I didn't win the business. We didn't win the business. My team didn't win the business. But Cece, as I said to you, you always stood out to me as having amongst your team, as just having such like this calm confidence about you. It was like you weren't constantly filling voids with words, but it was like when you spoke, I was leaning in, like she's going to say something, it'll be good, it'll be important. So again, you just always stood out to me. And so I've been so excited to watch your journey since then.
Well, first of all, thank you. That is just such a big compliment, and right, no pressure for having really impactful statements during this podcast now, but
Yeah. So you were at BrightPet, and I believe you had a marketing role there, correct?
I did. I kind of had a wild journey when I was with BrightPet. I started, so they're how I got into the pet industry.
Okay.
And I will say till the day I die that Matt Galladay, he's, one of the owners of the company, third generation family. He still leads the charge there. He is by far the greatest mentor I have ever had in my life. I feel that I owe so much to him and where I've come in my career. But yes, I did start with BrightPet in a marketing capacity. Really doing a little bit of everything from channel strategy, brand marketing, consumer research. Eventually kind of grew into some new roles where I started to oversee a little bit of our operations, working with our production plans, really taking the bulls by the horn on all of our packaging and co-manufacturing, both domestically and internationally. Then as we continued to grow through acquisition, my role changed again to like a very strict focus on channel marketing. So I've kind of worn many different hats there, but every part of it was so exciting, from working with our formulation team, which BrightPet has such an expert nutritionist team. So I learned so much working with them. But then, dipping my toes into all of the operations and the different aspects. It was a very rewarding role that was ever changing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, that's like, again, you started out in marketing there. And like,
Yes.
again, to have all those different roles, I think some people may look at that because this is with my own career. Some people look at the different roles I took on over time. They're kind of like, you kind of hopped around or you did all these different things and maybe you didn't have focus. But for me, it was like a conscious decision to get as much experience in different ways as I could, because I felt it would really up what I brought to the table. And I'm curious, was that your mindset as you were going through taking on all those different roles?
Absolutely. I mean, it was an organic change, but around, hey, we're going to, refresh our brand. I couldn't just focus on the design and the aesthetics and the marketing. I had to start challenging, okay, well, consumers are saying this. How does this relate to our packaging? How is this going to change? Are we focused on polyethylene or low density,
Yeah.
whatever? And then I'd start saying, okay, well, now I'm curious about our formulations. Here's what the market standards are, but how can we tweak this ever so much to make certain claims? And
Yeah.
I just kept seeking more and more information. And I think that allowed my role to really evolve. But I'm so grateful for my curiosity, really, because it's how
Yeah.
I got to where I am today. Because I just am not somebody who can focus on one little piece of the pie and feel comfort there. I always
Right.
need to be getting the big picture.
Yeah, I love that actually. Along the way, as I coach people and I led people, I would often tell them like, pick your head up, step back. I had this one woman, Melanie, put a sticker on her computer screen that said, "Ask why," because it was again, I was trying to get people, as I've tried to get myself over time, is to continue to keep that macro view, not get so tunnel vision. I mean, you have to get whatever you're doing done, but at the same time, allowing yourself to step back and see how it all fits together. So I love that you do that organically.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I think as women, we struggle with that. I think that, we're taught from a young age to not really ask questions, just to do what you're told, you know, be obedient in some way.
Yeah.
And prior to being in pet, I worked in a lot of male dominated industries. And it wasn't always easy to ask questions because they wanted you to really just stay in their lane. And maybe I'm overgeneralizing that and it's not really a female issue. I don't know. But I found there's a lot of empowerment that comes with asking questions, and
Yeah.
not in a way where you're necessarily challenging things, but that true curiosity of just I want to learn, and not having that embarrassment of where maybe you feel you're expected to already know it, to just say like,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know what I don't know. Teach me, train me, and let me absorb everything I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that I agree with you. I do think there's a bit of a gender thing there. It's just this society that we've been existing in. I think again, I too worked in male dominated industries. And again, it's like if that patriarchy, the system of it is just the way, it's the culture, I think it in a way it almost like stifles it can stifle some people, or at least when I was coming up, from like finding my voice and being able to insert myself into a conversation. And I speak of it that way because I had to go through like a lot of work to be able to find my voice. A very
Right.
like domineering person. I literally had to work with him, and I had to, the first time I did, I remember I like had to kind of do like a yoga, open my chest type thing, take a huge breath in, kind of pretending to do a back bend or something, go in the office. And but once you crack through that, I think you're like kind of training those muscles. But I think again in that kind of environment, like there is something there to it, and it's worth pushing through.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's such a great one. So you went from Bright Pet, I believe it was into Rachel Ray working with her pet food company. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like I said, I had a great experience at BrightPet, paved a lot of new roads, but I really wanted to validate the work I was doing with some bigger CPG experience. So I ended up jumping ship over to the James Smucker Company, and they have a huge portfolio of pet brands, or should say they did have a huge portfolio of pet brands. So I was on the pet innovation team, so leaning a lot more into that consumer research, regulatory, and legal aspects, formulation. But I was working with brands such as Rachel Ray's Nutrish, Kibbles and Bits, Meow Mix. Nature's Recipe was my biggest focus while I was there. But then several months in, they announced they were divesting the majority of their food brands to Post Holdings, which I still chuckle about seeing, big cereal company getting into the pet game. Um, and I was very, very fortunate to be one of three from the innovation team that was selected to go help stand up this $1 billion business under Post. But part of that also was a requirement to relocate. And so it was a great opportunity. I definitely could have had a very nice career and a nice cushy career in big CPG. But the one thing that I noticed is when I was with Bright Pet, I was able to do meaningful work, which basically means when there were new consumer trends that were coming out or pieces of innovation, we could act very quickly, we could innovate quickly, and really impact the pet consumer. When you're in bigger CPG, they still have great products, don't get me wrong, but you're playing in a mainstream space. And those consumers really aren't always ready for true innovation. And so I didn't feel my work was fulfilling me the way that I wanted it to. And that ultimately is what led to me and Peter getting connected and talking about BistroCat and getting this ball rolling, because I know that BistroCat isn't just going to completely change the pet landscape, but it is going to the first time really empower feline pet owners in a way that they've never been able to be empowered before. And that gets me excited, especially because I'm a cat person.
That's so cool. I love that story and the transition of it. And also that conscious element of like, maybe the big and sexy for other people. I love that you were kind of allowed yourself to look at it and evaluate, is that really best for me? And
Right.
so I'm going to get into that a little bit later about your decision making process there. But I also want to pause and make sure, can you give the audience an understanding? What is the brand? What is the product? Where are you in your process of the startup? What kind of give us an idea?
Yeah, so BistroCat in short is the world's first and only fully automated wet cat food feeder. The best way to explain it is we are like a Keurig, but for wet cat food. So, what I mean is, our device can actually hold up to 16 different bistro pods, which is our version of a K cup, if you will. They're just little cups of wet cat food. They all have QR codes on top, but you preload up to 16 of these in the device. And then, right from the comfort of your phone, you can schedule all of your feedings for your cat so that you can feed them on their schedule without sacrificing your own. So, maybe you're working late or going on a weekend trip, you can still have the ability to feed your cat wet food. It also has self-cleaning technology, which is really amazing. We know that cats need to have moisture in their diets to thrive, but cats are not wired to go to their watering bowl, and that's because they're designed to actually get their hydration from their prey. But again, as we continue to domesticate cats and bring them fully indoors, they lose that ability to go hunt down their meals. And when we're only feeding kibble, they become very dehydrated, which can lead to, kidney failure, skin and coat issues, gut issues. So it's really important to get these wet meals into their daily diet. With just 2 meals a day, cats can get up to 70% of those daily moisture requirements.
Oh,
But
wow.
feeding wet meals, it's a really crappy experience. You cut your finger when you're trying to open the can, and then you have to slam it down to try to get the food to come out. Or you get one of those little pouches, you tear it open, the gravy splatters all over you. Then
Yeah.
you have to actually be home to serve it. So our device takes all of those pain points away to make for a seamless feeding experience. In addition to that, and what I'm probably the most excited about, is this health platform that we've built in. So we actually have a smart camera that's built into the hardware that, of course, allows you to live stream your cat. There's a microphone so you can talk and have that connection even if you're not home. But we also are tracking how much the cat is eating and how quickly they're eating during every feeding time. So this allows pet parents to have a deeper understanding of their cat's preferences. So no more wasting hundreds of dollars figuring out what flavors your cat likes. Our data will say, hey, your cat really loves tuna and whitefish, for example, but whenever you feed the beef protein, your cat never finishes it. So stop buying it, basically. But in addition to that, because we have these feeding patterns, anytime there's a significant shift in that, so maybe your cat on average takes 3 minutes to eat a meal, and now they're starting to graze 20 or 30 minutes, that could indicate a dental issue, a thyroid issue. So we can send push notifications out to the phone so that pet parents can actually be empowered, because cats are not like dogs. If something's going on with the dog lets you know that they're not happy, they're not feeling well. Cats will mask it until their dying day. They are not going to let you know when they're in pain. They will actually even purr as a way of pain management, which is really confusing if you don't understand cats. So it's become very hard for pet parents to understand the overall health of their cat. Then there's also this crazy statistic that 80% of cat owners never go back to the vet after the very first visit. And
Oh,
again, it's
wow.
because, you have these cats that are indoors, so you're not worried about fleas and ticks or heartworms. And if the cat seems okay, you just assume all is well, so why go spend the money? But then when there is a problem, by the time you recognize it, it's so far progressed that not only are you facing extremely high medical bills, but the care plan could be very overwhelming. So we're just giving our consumers a platform to have this proactive approach to their cat's health so they can give them a better life. And I don't want to go too much into it all because I get so excited, but we have all this phase two innovation that's coming out that includes AI technology that can actually read pain management and distress on your cat's face and then put them through triage if they are showing pain in their facial expressions, as well as a smart scale to capture your cat's weight. 60% of all US cats are overweight. And
Okay.
so this allows us to have an easy platform to know, what your cat's weight is. If they're put on a weight management plan, you'll have the data to say, hey, look, since we've switched their diet, they've lost 10% of their weight over 3 months, or whatever that data is. Again, all about just making this better experience. Then really the last piece of what we are, of course, I've talked about the hardware, but it's the food. Just like Keurig, would never have been successful if it only gave out crappy coffee. We know that our power is in our food. So we are working to partner with some of the most beloved brands in market today. I can't say yet on this call who those brands are, but over the next few weeks, we'll start rolling out some announcements. We're very excited. But it'll be a mix of your everyday wellness diets as well as therapeutic RX diets. So if your cat is on a prescription diet, we want to be able to provide that so you don't have to shift their maintenance plan.
Oh, that's amazing. I feel like I just went to cat university, and I mean that in the most loving way. Like, no, it's really so I have a dog. I actually do love cats. Well, I've never had a cat as an adult, but I really do. I'm a sucker for all the cat videos. Like, everyone is. I'm not special, but
Right,
um no, but I really love like what the things that you just told me. It's also obviously I mean, it seems to me it's also an education platform. So if you're a
right,
new cat owner, I mean, who knew the fact that it blows my mind that what you said about cats and they don't go to get water. They're not predisposed to do that. That's
right.
amazing. And like they actually get it from their food, and then it makes so much more sense. Whereas, obviously totally different experience with dogs. So anyway, just thank you for so much for sharing all that. I think that hopefully the audience was able to really absorb that also, and maybe it shifts your thoughts about what you need to do for your cat. Or I think it's also really interesting just from the pet food industry. It's like it's the product of the food itself, but also that
Right.
technology, also the product of the unit itself. So it's really bringing so many things forward for the consumer.
Right, exactly. And cat parents have been so neglected. I mean, truly, if you look at the pet industry, every major brand is so focused on dog, and it's like, oh, and we have some cat in the background
Yeah.
too for you cat people. And the innovation has really just been lacking for cat parents. So I like to say, it's the decade of the cat, not just the year of the cat. It's our decade, and we are just so focused on bringing
Cool.
this health platform for cats, and I love it.
That's so cool. So does it feed one cat at a time or two?
So it's primarily made for a single cat
Okay.
to go
So
in
you
and
get two
feed.
separate
Now,
ones.
right. So
Okay.
the way that, well, what we know is 1 in 3 Americans own a cat. 1 in 12 Americans have 3 or more cats. So
Oh,
the likelihood of a multi-cat house is pretty high. And so we have started to work around ways of how a user could just have one feeding device but have multiple cats. And so one thing that we're looking at is tags to put on your cat's collar. So we already have this smart camera, we already have AI technology built in. So it could be as simple as, reading this collar so the device knows which cat is approaching the feeder. And if it's the wrong cat, it's not going to feed them. If it's the correct cat, then they go ahead and get their food. Um, and we have a really robust innovation plan
yeah.
built out that we're excited about, but definitely being mindful of these multi cat households.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was telling my friend about you, and she has multiple cats in her house, and she asked me that question. I was like, oh, actually, that's such a great question. So in the phase of innovation that you went through, I'm curious, was it cat first that you were looking to solve problems for, or was it the idea of this feeder that then you were like, oh, actually, this is more fit for a cat? I'm curious, like, what's that process like?
Yeah, so I have to give credit to my partner, Peter. He is really where the idea stemmed from. So, unlike me, who's had cats my entire life, and I'm telling you cats because I had 5 growing up. We grew
Oh.
up in the country, and it was always like a joke when one died, a vacancy sign would go up because within minutes there'd be another stray on the back porch trying to come in. So, I already knew so much about cat ownership. Peter, on the other hand, had a severe allergy to cats. And
Oh,
it
wow.
wasn't until he started dating his now current fiance that he found a cat that he could be home with and not, have a whole horrible allergy. And so they do all the tech stuff. And Peter's a tech guy. He's a serial entrepreneur, has so much experience in the space. So he's like, we got these water bowls that are automated, these kibble feeders that are automated. Why has nobody invented a wet cat food feeder? Because I just want it to be automated. He loves tech. And so his friends were like, go and build it, be the first one to do it. And so it really did start out just with this idea of convenience, just being able to feed your cat wet food. And as he and I started really diving into, okay, what is this product going to look like? We were able to start looking into the actual health and the importance of wet food. Now, of
Okay.
course, that's where my experience in pet is really helpful because I already know these things. But so we really developed it then to be focused on cats because of the importance of moisture.
Okay.
That said, everybody's already asking about small dogs who traditionally eat a lot of wet meals because they tend to lose their teeth early on. I'm not rolling it out, never say never. But today, our focus really is on cats because it's just such an important health piece for
Hmm.
them. And I think
Yeah.
consumers are recognizing that too. I mean, for so long, kibble has dominated the space in terms
Yeah.
of food. But now, when you really look at it, I think the entire pet market right now globally is growing at like a 4% CAGR. But when you zoom in on wet cat food, it's growing at over 5%. So it's
Mm.
outpacing the whole industry. And I think it's because consumers are starting to take the time to understand what their pets really actually need. And there's this big trend also of demonizing kibble because of its correlation to obesity, both in dogs and cats. So you
Yeah.
see these launch of, new pet food forms like, fresh food, which
Yeah.
of course, now you're not dealing with kibble, you have a little bit more moisture in your diet, but it introduces a whole new realm of issues because now their food has to be in the refrigerator. And I love my cats dearly. I do not want their food next to mine in the refrigerator. It just creeps me out. And so I'm sticking with wet food. And I think a lot of our market feels the same. But again, it goes back to that icky process of having to serve it. And so we're able to kind of solve all of these pieces,
So cool.
really seamlessly. So it's exciting.
So cool. So when did you launch?
We are officially launching, and when I say launch,
Oh,
shipping product in
okay.
January. So we are accepting pre-orders
I
today.
saw that.
For any of your listeners, if they want to use a special promo code, it is elite-VIP. That will bring the cost down to $195 for the feeding device. So that's something exciting for you guys. We are taking those pre-orders now, but our product will start shipping in January. So we just finished all of our prototyping. We've done really thorough testing to make sure everything is covered. We've submitted all of our patents. We have over 8 patents pending. That's a combination of utility and design patents. It's a very safe product for cats. We're really excited. So now that we finished prototyping, we're going into full commercialization. Our website is actually being remodeled to be more set for e-commerce. So what you see today will look different than how it's going to look in a few weeks. Our food brand partners will start to be uploaded onto our website as well. But yeah, it's kind of where we are today. We're now going into full production and should be ready to ship in January.
That's amazing. How long has it been that you've been involved in it? So like until from start to where you got now, what's that time frame been?
Yeah, so Peter's kind of epiphany of what this company should be happened around the spring of last year. And so it was really focused on just, how do we bring this,
Okay.
to life? And then
Wow.
I joined early this year, so just a few months after. And it's just been, pedal to the
Wow.
metal since then. We've had really great fundraising to date. We raised just around $900,000 in all friends and family pre-seed, which has been so exciting to get all
Yeah.
that support. We've now just entered into our official seed round that's institutional. This is what's going to support all of our production and our big marketing ramp, which of course is the core of getting your business out there is strong marketing. You can't mess that up. We need to nail
Yeah,
it. So it takes
absolutely.
it takes a bigger chunk of our investment, and then
Yeah.
hopefully we'd like to start paying all of our team,
Oh,
so it's exciting.
yeah, absolutely. Well, but let me also pause and thank you so much for the generous offer that you extended to our audience. Folks, I will, when I post this video, I will put it in the comments so that you're able to use it. So if you don't worry. And so yeah, that I mean, I love that time frame. A little bit of the reality check around that time frame because it wasn't like that's a pretty short period of time. And I know you've been working like crazy. You've also were sharing with me that you don't have a completely full-time staff. So I mean, honestly, like hats off to you for all you've been able to do and get it like up and running and again in such a short time. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I told Peter when we first met, I thrive in chaos. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I really don't. But I love having things to do and stay focused. My
Yeah.
family tells me I'm crazy all the time because I'm working nonstop. And in addition to that, I've got, 3 kids at home who are in a million
Oh,
and different activities. And somehow I ended up volunteering, at the church and being on the PTA. And
yeah.
if it wasn't for coffee, I don't know.
But it is really interesting. I think like some of us actually thrive when we have a lot of things that we're doing. And I have to say, like, I get from people from time to time, well, you should do this, or maybe you should not do so many things. And it's like, well, that may be for you, but I love to hear you talking about your ability to, and you're actually thriving in an environment where you're doing a lot of different things. Also, all of them pretty high pressure.
Just a little bit. But I say it's good to be uncomfortable
Oh, yeah.
because that means things are moving. If you're busy and you have goals to go after, that to me is a really good side. It's not always easy. There's definitely roadblocks and hurdles and times when you feel like your hair's on fire and the world's crashing down around you.
Yeah.
But that just fuels you because I know what we're trying to do. I know how important our mission is. And so that just keeps me driving forward. And I am a firm believer that comfort is the first indication of failure. The
Oh,
moment you get comfortable and you start to feel like, okay, things are just going to ride now, they're easy, something's going wrong. If you're not always reaching for the next thing, trying to stay ahead of
yeah.
it, that is a dangerous place to be. So, chaos to me, it's a really good place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such great insight. I really appreciate you bringing the attention to that. I mean, you're so right. Again, there's people that we just don't feel, it's like, it's actually uncomfortable to feel that level of kind of
Right.
comfort going on. And I think there's an inherent element of the curiosity that you've spoken of, having just be such a fabric of who you are. That's that curiosity. I feel it too, to like, constantly be learning and get exposed to new things and more, adding more tools to my toolbox and things like that. So it's a great way to, just keep it going.
Right, exactly. And it's not a bad thing if you're not like that. Not
Yeah.
everybody is wired to work the way that you and I do.
Yeah.
And that's so okay. And it doesn't mean you can't start a business or have success. It's just a different way of getting there. But for me, this is what I like and this is why I'm able to do what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That actually is a really great segue because one of the things I want to talk to you about is this dynamic that I observe when I'm looking at your past, which I've gone through as well, where you're working for someone else and then you're on your own, and then you're working for someone else and then you're on your own, and then you actually create something of your own. And so, or whatever the kind of cadence of that is, but there's this entrepreneurial spirit, yet you make a decision to work for someone else, and that can be a challenging road to navigate. Or it could be super easy for some people, I don't know, but I'd love to hear your experience through that and kind of like what's been your north star as you've made those decisions along the way.
Yeah, so it's been a learning experience. I will say that first. Yeah, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit in me. I went to college, I got my degree in business administration. My focus was on marketing, but I minored in entrepreneurship and fashion merchandising.
Oh,
And I actually started a business my senior year of college. It was a brick and mortar retail store, and it failed miserably. And it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. And I know that's a
mhm.
mind-blowing thing to say, like, how was your biggest failure?
Yeah.
But my biggest failure was my biggest success. And what I mean is, I was so young and naive when I did this. Everything was rose colored glasses. I just thought money grew on trees, build it and people will come was my motto. And that was not the case, especially trying to open a very high end women's boutique in a kind of low income neighborhood, which the Youngstown area kind of is. It was challenging, but that experience taught me so much about the importance of looking at this big picture. And it was the hardest thing I ever went through, but the most important because of the lessons I learned. So I went from working for myself there to, okay, now I got to figure things out. And so I entered into corporate America, worked in a few different industries from traffic control, which was super exciting, to engineering and architecture, and then, of course, into pet. And I think the thing from going from working from yourself and then working with a team, it just comes down to relationships. I always have respect, of course, for my bosses and for the people that work underneath me. But I never like to go into an environment with this structure of somebody's here, somebody's here, somebody's here.
Yeah.
To me, every person at every level plays such a critical part in the overall picture. And the teams that I've worked in that did really well and thrived respected that dynamic. And so when the higher ups are making these, big corporate decisions, certainly you're not going to know all the details of the reasoning and why. But when that communication is shared with the team, so that the person on the ground floor says, hey, this work might just feel like paperwork, but me doing a good job filters right on up into this overarching goal. It makes their work meaningful and it makes for a really great team dynamic versus teams where I'm on where people worked in silos and it was, I'm the owner of this, I'm going to hoard this information and you're just going to do what I say. Those crash and burn every single time.
Yeah.
So for me, it doesn't really matter if you're working for yourself or working for someone else. It's just having that respect for your team and really sharing that big picture. And of course, being able to work independently, but being open to collaboration is just so important. And with that, I also think it's understanding people's motivations. We've talked a lot about how you and I are motivated, but there are people who just want to show up, do a good job, collect their paycheck because they're focused on something different. They don't have this desire, to climb, and that's 100% okay, but being able to recognize other people's motivations and what they define as success is so important to moving the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, like that awareness that you bring to the table. And I think especially as a leader of an organization, that really helps to set the tone and the culture of the place. And I love how you're literally walking the talk when the way you
I
describe it.
try.
I mean, it's like you're creating that environment, I think becomes really important. And I mean, it sounds like that's what you decided to do with this last move you made.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just so important to me and for everybody to feel like they're making a difference and doing something. And I've always told the teams that I led, like, look, if this is your job today, but you're curious about something in a completely different area of our company,
Yeah.
let's job shadow, get some experience, see if you
Yeah,
do
yeah,
like it. Be open to exploring new things. And I just think it makes for such a good conversation. And I have to say, I owe a lot to that again to Matt,
yeah.
who was a mentor. That's how he really ran the team over at BrightPet. And I had so much admiration for it. And I really want to mimic that to the best of my ability.
That's so cool. I love to hear stories like that, because again, a lot of times we can hear stories or see examples of leaders that we don't want to emulate. And again, like, this is
Right.
part of why I created this platform. Because I was like, hey, wait a second. I want to have an opportunity to elevate authentic leaders who are really people focused, and if in an authentic way. So it's so great to hear all of this from you. So thank you so much. When you were going through these changes though, when you were like, okay, I'm on my own, I'm going to work for someone else, and then you were like, okay, I'm going to do this Bright Pet. It's a bit of being on your own. You're at a brand, but it's a brand you are founding and leading now. So I'm curious if two dynamics came up for you, either self-doubt along the way or thinking, oh, maybe I should stay. Maybe I should go to another brand. Or hearing what other people said. Were there other people who gave you their shoulds, their opinions, so to say? And how did you handle either one?
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's always doubts, right? Are you making the right decision? I felt that especially when I was leaving in that transition between Smucker and Post. I came home and I talked to my husband and I said, look, I could make us a really nice life if I stay here, make a lot of money doing something that felt super easy to me. And it was a lot slower paced than what I was used to at BrightPet. And I said, this is an easy gig and it's a lot of money and this would be great. And I'm so fortunate to have married the man that I did. Founders get so much credit, and we never talk about the spouse behind the founder. They deserve every medal because they're in the trenches with us. They ride the roller coaster. They're there to support us when we feel like, oh shit, like, did I do the right thing? Like, this is really hard. What
Yeah.
if this doesn't work? Right? There's
Yeah.
always that fear of the unknown in the future. But again, I've been so fortunate. And he's the one who said, like, look, are you going to be happy here? Are you going to feel fulfilled?
Yeah.
And I just didn't think I would if I
Oh,
stayed there. And so I knew I wanted to explore some options. Again, came into contact with Peter, and I just couldn't wait to tell my husband Chaz about it. I said,
good.
listen to this idea he has. I want to help bring this to life. And without missing a beat, he said, go and do it. And I said, look, this is going to be a true startup.
Yeah.
It's me and him. We're going to pave this path. We're going to figure out our budgets. There's a chance that the market doesn't want this. We didn't know early on, now we have
Mhm.
all our market validation and our CACs and all of that. But, early on, and he said, look, if this is going to make you happy, you need to go do it.
Mhm.
And if it crash and burns, we'll figure it out. I mean, he works
Mhm.
full time. Like, we just felt and trust in each other so
So
much.
cool.
That, and then I think, just my faith in general has really been the corner of everything, and
Nice.
using that to guide me, and it's really a nice fallback when you have a strong faith to know that you're going to get somewhere and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But that said, there's a lot of people who have doubted things,
Mm.
too. And I always look at it as of one of two ways. You can take criticism or people who doubt you, and it can bring you down. You can say, you're probably right, and you can go some other direction.
Mm.
Or you can use that as motivation. And that's what I like to do. I hear them and I say, okay,
Yeah.
why do you think these things? Do I need to be thinking of these things? Sometimes the answer is yes, it wasn't
Yeah.
something, but there's always an answer. I think every opposition is just an opportunity in disguise. So
Yeah.
when someone tries to throw that at me, I'm like, great, let's solve it. Let's
Yeah.
fix it. Let's make this no longer a concern. I love that. I love when
Yeah.
people doubt me because I love proving people wrong. I'm a little bit petty like that.
No, it's so great. I love that you touched on so many different things there. The one, your faith. I think for the listeners, for the audience, it may be a faith in God or whatever that, or the universe or whatever we want to call it. But I do think that that's been an important thing for me is to be able to say like, okay, universe, like and believing and sometimes it's like that's the thing that's going to get me through. And I'm like, okay, I can't worry and be grateful, worry and have faith at the same time. So I try to balance that with myself. But so it's again for that, I think for the audience, there's a lot of different ways to relate to that. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's been definitely key
Yeah,
for me as well. Um, yeah, I just think, and the part about what other people say, we actually have the choice of how much we want to take that on, how much we want to
right.
entertain that, get annoyed by it, whatever. But to your point, like I love the way you're literally telling us that you're curious. When someone gives you that, which go back to your thread through this whole conversation, it's like you're actually curious. Gosh, is there anything to that? And you're like, yeah, no, or oh
Yep.
well, that's added fuel, here I go. So it's those are just such great tips, I think, because there's so many people I think who are in the audience that may be going through these types of things, and sometimes it can just feel so alone, so lonely, excuse me. And kind of like, what do you do next? So these are all just great tips. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's so much more powerful too. Like, even outside of your career, I use these same
Yeah.
analogies in raising my kids. Now, granted, they're very little. They're 5, 4, and almost 3.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we back to back. But even when they want to do stuff as toddlers, it's like, hey, I don't think that you should climb up on that. And they're like, no, I'm going to. And it's like, well, You're probably going to fall. You're probably going to get hurt, but, go explore it. Of course, I never would let them be in a dangerous
Not
situation,
everybody. Yeah.
but if they're like on the couch, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, like I'm going to share this. And I try to encourage their own curiosity and the opportunity for them, to learn of it too. And I have to say, like, my kids are a huge motivation in everything I do also. When I was growing up, and my mom and my grandma, everyone's so supportive. I have a lot of strong women in our family.
Yeah.
But there was always this joke that my grandma would say is that college was for women to get their MRS degree, their Mrs. degree, to go and find a husband. And that just wasn't going to fly with me. I am way too independent for something like that. But I think there is still this kind of stereotype that women take the back seat. And if you want to start a family and have kids and get married, there's this pressure of really you have to kind of choose because how could anybody
Mhm.
do it all?
Yeah.
And I want to show my kids and my daughters, because they're all girls, that you really can do it
Mhm.
all. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make sacrifices, but it's not impossible to have an amazing career, to raise a family, to be involved with your family and still make it to all the things. You just have to know how to advocate for yourself and you have to understand your priorities. Somebody told me
Mm.
this quote
Yeah.
once. I don't know who the author is of it, so I don't know if any of your listeners know, they can drop it in the comments. But there was this analogy of juggling balls,
Oh,
and you have glass balls and you have rubber balls. And so all these pieces are moving, but if you drop a rubber ball, it's not a big deal. It bounces back up and you can get it. But then you have these glass balls where if you drop it, that's it. It's shattered. And so being able to understand in your life, what's a rubber ball and what's a glass ball. And
wow. I love
glass
that.
ball one day might be a really big project at work. The glass ball another day might be your kid's soccer game that you're not willing to miss out on because they only do this for so long. And so I try to, when I think of my to-do list and what I need to commit to, I
Yeah.
try to remind myself, is this really a glass ball or is it something that can bounce back later? And that kind of analogy really has helped me a lot too.
So great. I love the visual of that. And I love the way you talk about again. It's like your priorities that you're actually checking in with, not like once a year, it's literally daily. And
Right,
two things that it sparked was when you were saying those things. One is I've heard people a lot of times talking about like life harmony rather than balance. And
right.
so I think that goes along with what you're saying. And then it was funny because just the other day, someone messaged me on LinkedIn. Do you get those like actual voicemails? It's so interesting. I get those every once in a
I'm
while from
starting to
people.
get them,
Yeah,
yes.
and I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. But I know I often respond by typing. So if anybody sends me a voicemail there and I respond by typing, it's just I'm not ready to do that yet. But anyway, so but someone asked me like they mentioned some of the stuff I do, and they were like, "How do you do all these things?" And I was replying this morning to the person typing, saying that exactly what you just said. It's like I am a huge proponent of to-do lists.
Mhm.
And but they're prioritized and it's a daily thing, but it's that way I know. It's like to your point, this is a glass ball. It has to take priority today. And I think that's really key. And to your point about like in life, I think that's really important. And I do think it's a way to be able to do many things at once professionally, or simply it could just be like a way that you can reach optimal performance or pursue optimal performance is by doing things like that. So those are really great tips, and
Yeah,
I love the quote. The such a great analogy.
I love analogies.
Okay, so before I let you go, I do want to dip a little bit into just the dynamic of the pet industry as a whole. I've tell me what it was like during the pandemic. I think it kind of actually ramped up because so many new people
Yep.
so many people buying pets like for the first time or adding or whatever. But has there been a backlash as well, meaning like, a downturn after the pandemic? Tell me about the landscape.
Well, I would say after the pandemic, you definitely saw a spike in pet ownership, both across dogs and cats. You saw an increase in pet food spending that really hasn't stopped or slowed down pace. Even adoptions aren't losing, any pace right now. You continue to see that ownership rise. I think it has a lot to do with these, kind of emerging millennials and Gen Zs too. They're delaying certain things in their life, so they're filling it with pets. I read once that people are now buying homes based on yard space for their dogs versus anything
Oh.
else. So I find that interesting. And then also we've seen this big boom of e-commerce now, this new channel for for pet. And I want to say that now the D2C sector in the pet space is growing at a 28% CAGR, which is mind
Wow.
blowing. But it
Wow.
shows that consumers are looking for this convenience factor. What's
Hmm.
also really interesting is we've seen this huge increase in price. I want to say it's probably, and this is just my assumption, I would say the industry as whole has probably experienced like a 20% price increase. And that's because of the rise of commodities and what it costs to manufacture the foods now. But what's really interesting, as we really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet with all of this inflation, is pet consumers will downgrade their own eating habits and their own spending. They have no problem buying private label for themselves, or going to the dollar store and getting whatever snacks and food they want because it's them eating it. But when it comes to their pets, they will be damned before they ever sacrifice those meals. They are going to buy them the top of the line. They want to make sure that their pets are getting the best of the best. They're not going to buy that private label. And that to me is just so interesting.
Yeah.
I would say the only two recession proof industries are the pet industry and the baby industry, because we are always going to give them the best. And so being in the space, I love that. It's a real comfort to know that.
Right.
But it also then when you have this business perspective, you have to be mindful of it, because certainly you never want to take advantage of your
Right.
customers. You want to always have meaningful products, but understanding why they're making those decisions. Is it because they just want to be flashy and say their dog's eating the best or their cat's eating the best? No, it's because they really do have this understanding of what their pets need. And I think so much of that has come because of the pandemic. People had
Mm.
time to now be home with their pets 24/7. They have time to start researching. If you're gone all day long, you might not know what your pets are doing at home, so you don't think about it. But when we now all of a sudden are together all the time, it's like I'm noticing these little habits that my pet has, and why are they doing these things? And
Yeah.
so that has really allowed us to have a lot of innovation, and it keeps me excited.
Yeah, definitely. It's so fascinating. I was thinking about that the other day, just preparing for this, talk with you, is I was thinking the same thing. Like, and that's why I tell people a lot of times, pets and babies. It's like if you're in those businesses, we just want to make sure that we're taking it's our either way, it's our air quotes kid, And
Right.
so I mean, I definitely know with Petey, my dog, which sometimes joins episodes accidentally. Um, but it's like this conscious choice to feed her the best. And so I totally get it. I'm so excited for what you're doing. And it's awesome to see again that it's like so built around insights and solving for problems and pain points that that consumers have. It's so smart. I'm excited. I can't wait to find out what brands you're partnering with on the food.
I know. The only one I can tell you today is a new brand called
Okay.
Cat Gourmet. It
Okay.
is high protein, targeted health diets. There's four SKUs.
Okay.
There's one that supports brain health, one for digestion, one for immunity, and one for hip and joint. So high protein, high moisture.
Okay.
That brand should be on our website in the next couple weeks, so I'm okay to say it. But there are going to be a lot of fast follows that are not
Okay.
new brands, but very well-known big players in the space. And so, yeah, just
Amazing.
hang tight. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we'll have a big press release coming out with some other exciting news that I cannot share today, which is a bummer, but lots of exciting updates rolling out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that definitely have to stay in touch and get those updates so I can tell the audience. So before I let you go, I have just two questions for you, and one is, what's the hardest things and the best things about being an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, I would say the hardest thing is probably the time commitment, because
Okay.
it's nonstop. You don't have this clock in, clock out. It's 24/7. And it just takes so much of you to make sure, because you have to focus on all the areas. You don't have departments focusing on these little pieces. You really are owning the entire business.
Yeah.
And so that can be very overwhelming. I also will say that is the best thing, which
Oh,
sounds crazy, but being able to have that control and set that vision
right.
is so thrilling, and to
Oh,
have the input from people. And we've built an incredible advisory board. In
oh,
fact, some of the folks from BrightPet sit on my advisory board, which is wonderful.
that's
We
awesome.
have, a few others like Dave Wardell, who's responsible basically from the huge D2C success with Chubbies. He's on our advisory board. So that part's really exciting too, getting people from other perspectives to share their knowledge with you and make introductions. It's just super rewarding.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think sometimes we're like, I don't know which way thing I want to focus on. I love the way that you were able to say it. It's the worst, but it's also the best. And so then the last thing is just like where you said it's D2C. So right now you're in pre-order. So those are all through your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our distribution strategy is really all through our website. And then once you get the app, when you purchase the product, it's a free benefit to get the app and all the insights.
Okay.
You can manage your subscriptions right through your phone, make it super easy. We have plans to get on Amazon really quickly after launch. We know that 76% of pet parents start all their pet research on Amazon.
Oh,
So
wow.
it makes sense for us to live there. We toy around with brick and mortar. I'm a little undecided if that's the right path for us, but it's definitely not off the table. But right now, we're focused on e-commerce. We know that's what our consumers want. They want that ease, and we're here to deliver it for them.
That's awesome. Can you repeat the special offer code? I think I got it, but I want to hear you repeat it again.
Yep, it's elite-VIP.
Okay, awesome. And folks, that'll allow you to get the equipment for $195. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, you won't
Okay.
have the food options to pick for what ships with your food yet. But as soon as that's live on the website, we'll send you out an email so that you can pick what food you want to ship with your product. And again, right now, we're looking to start shipping everything in January, which is great for the
Okay.
people who adopt pets over the holidays.
I was gonna say it's a great holiday gift, folks. Buy it now; it'll take care of
It
itself
is.
when it
And I
comes.
will also say for the people who like to think long term, and that's the kind of person I am, we soon will have the capability on our website too. If you want to pay up front for a year worth of food because your cat's going to be eating for the next year, you will get that device for free. So another
Oh
added benefit
wow!
in there. So all things to come, very exciting. But yeah,
Innovation, right and left. I love it. Cece, it's been awesome to chat with you today. I'm so excited about what you're doing. Folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. We learned so much, got so energized and inspired by all you're doing and just your approach. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, Cece.
yes, thank you so much. It was great catching up to you. Always
Yeah,
love to follow everything you're doing.
oh, thank you. All right, everybody, have a great day. Thanks.
Bye bye.